it was an acting direction from Shakespeare to me.
Hello, we are here with Sun Sounds Arizona in Flagstaff, Arizona, and welcome to episode 21. We can now buy a drink of Untamed Theater, presented by the Flagstaff Shakespeare Festival. I'm Becki.
And I'm Hannah.
And I'm Dawn. Today we have actor Justus Burkitt with us, who you most recently saw on stage as our Iago, but will be playing one of our Dromios in the upcoming production of The Comedy of Errors. But before we jump over to our conversation with Justus, how's life, Shrews?
Wait, first off, Becki, oh my gosh, we have got to do like a 21st birthday for the podcast. So I was already planning, I mean, it's coming up soon. I want to throw us a 2-year-old birthday party in January. Can we please do that? Yeah. First of all, we need to do like, you know how like when babies are 1 and 2, they do like the cake smash and they have like some silly theme, like terrible twos or like whatever. I want to do like a silly themed birthday for our second birthday. But we should go get a drink for our 21st. That's so fun. Wait. Everyone listening, go get a drink in our honor. Listening to this, go grab a drink. Yes. I don't care what time of day it is, but you need an alcoholic beverage to listen to episode 21. I love that. Thank you for noticing that. Dawn, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah. I mean, I'm working a lot. We bought a new house. That's kind of our big new thing. Yeah. It is money pit and it needs so much work. And it's pretty stressful to do that on top of being a mom and an executive director and teaching trapeze. And I just started back up my intro to theater class at Coconino Community College. So I'm just feeling a little like, woo. At every end, everything is a lot. So that's me just painting a lot of walls and scraping a lot of gunk and trying to get it ready to move in.
Yeah. How about you, Bex?
Yeah. I am mostly okay. I'm going through some things that I'm not quite yet ready to be super duper public about. But yeah, it's been a rough couple weeks. But you know, we're here. We're on a high today, so we're feeling it. Cryptic, but there you are. Aerial's good. I am in pole and trapeze, and so again with being a little bit vague, but there have been times where I've needed to like mention to somebody that I do aerial, but I say like, you know, I do pole and trapeze, and I don't feel like I need to specify that it's recreational or like it's a hobby, but everyone automatically latches on to like, oh, so you're like a pole dancer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, thank you. I appreciate that compliment, but not where I'm going with that.
And how's work?
Work is good. You know, Santa's elves. We work in the off season too.
All year round.
Gotta be ready for Christmas Day.
Gotta be ready.
Yeah. And how are you? I sound like I go somewhere weird or whatever.
Well, so like there was like lots of tea to spill. Well, there is a little bit of tea to spill because when this episode comes out, I am allowed to announce. We weren't allowed to make any sort of like social media announcement until this week. And I mentioned it last episode, but I can finally tell you what I'm up to. So Becki works for the Polar Express on the admin side of things. Company man, what's your actual position name?
Yeah, so this is my second year as a manager, and I started as a local stage manager a couple years ago.
So Becki works for the Polar Express, and I am so excited. I got cast in the New York location of the Polar Express, so that's what I'm doing, everybody, because I've gotten a couple questions about what is the thing you booked. So I booked Polar Express, and I'll be with friend of the podcast, Cadence Lamb. She and I will be on a train, spreading Christmas joy. Yes. But yeah, I'm good. I leave in about a month. But my sublet is like signed, sealed, delivered my flight is booked. So now it's kind of like wrapping up things here. It's like really sad because I keep getting invited to do things and like be in shows and do aerial shows. And there is so much aerial going on this winter that I can't be in. There's like 3 Halloween shows and showcases. And of course, like I couldn't be in Comedy of Errors. There's just so many things I had to say no to, which was like really sad. Of course, like leaving you two and not seeing Blake for a couple months. And yeah, it's gonna be rough to be away from home. But I think it's also gonna be really nice to just get away and get to the city and see some friends out on the East Coast and see lots of shows. And
I always say like you always see the opportunities that like you can't take or miss, quote unquote missing.
You're missing.
But like you don't know what lies ahead. And like because you can see what you're missing, but you can't see what the future holds.
Exactly. And I mean, honestly, I think what New York is really going to be helpful for me is like reminding myself why I do this. Like, you know, because like we live up on top of a mountain where like there's like not many options to see art except for art that we are producing. And that can be like really hard because I feel like I'm in a vacuum a little bit. So I'm just really excited to go see what other people are doing, the art other people are making, and just like get some fresh ideas. And hopefully when I come back in January, especially after STA, New York and STA, I feel like I'm just going to be so revived and like gung-ho for Shakespeare and ready to produce 2023. But I'm going to miss you guys.
And we're going to miss you.
Come visit me.
Miss you a lot.
Come visit me. Bring Blake. Take him to New York.
New York, baby.
New York, baby. Awesome. Well, everybody, we already recorded with the lovely Justus, so we are going to jump on over to our conversation with him. Justus. Hello, Justus. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are all of you?
We are good. Dawn's munching on a plum, nectarine, plum.
Nice.
Silly girl. I don't know. You just brought a plum to recording. Silly.
Hey, I'm on mute.
I know. I was like shoveling food in my face before this.
This is Untamed.
Yes, we're fully untamed.
Untamed plums.
Justin. Oh, Becki was really into that.
I mean, it wouldn't make any sense, but because
Untamed plums.
Untamed plums, or like that's the plums are the name of a gaggle of listeners. I don't know.
The plums are plums. Anywho, Justus, tell the internet world about yourself. Who are you? How do we know you? What are you up to?
Yeah, so my name's Justus Burkitt. I am an actor in Arizona, right now currently based in Flagstaff, where y'all are. But I have been doing theater in and around the desert Southwest for the majority of my life. And I'm a graduate of Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, got my bachelor's in theater performance there. I've done stuff with Southwest Shakespeare Festival down in Mesa. I've done stuff with Lark Productions in Prescott, which is a site-specific theater company. Done some stuff with Flag Shakes, which is how I got to know you three. Hannah and I have been in a show together. Becki and I have been in a show together. And of course, I've interacted with Dawn quite a bit during my time here as well. But yeah, I also spent some time in Utah. I worked in the electrics department doing some administrative work for the Utah Shakespeare Festival. So got some exposure to that kind of big name regional theater festival as well. Other background stuff about me. I'm born and raised in Prescott, Arizona. So a Northern Arizona local, lifelong, pretty much. And then on the side, I have a day job and I powerlift and have a whole variety of other interests, 2 dogs and a cat, and a lovely wife who I own this home with. And yeah, so
it's so pretty.
Yeah, so outside of theater, my life is pretty calm and quiet and normal, I would say.
Nice. Thank you. Would you tell everyone a little bit about, I think it's fascinating. You had a background that, I mean, I'm really jealous of having, theater practitioners as parents. Can you tell us a little bit about them, what they're up to, and also just growing up with theater parents? That sounds like a blast.
Yeah, so my mom and dad, Carla and Lane Burkitt, shout out to my parents. They are both theater people. My mom is a full-time theater professional in that her job for the last 20 some odd, maybe 30 years, has been teaching theater in schools in the Prescott area, and has been doing that her whole professional life. She also has a bachelor's degree in theater, like I do. And my dad is kind of a part-time theater professional. He is more on the technical side. But he also acts as well. He was Benedict in Lark Productions, Much Ado About Nothing, that went up this past summer, which, by the way, the aforementioned Lark Productions, that's my parents' theater company.
Yeah.
So they do have a theater company that's run by the two of them. My mom is the artistic director. My dad is the managing director. So they both wear a lot of hats.
Yes, so many hats.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, with any small theater company, that's really how it is. Nobody just has one job. Everybody has at least like 3 or 4 jobs.
Totally.
So I have to know, is that how they met? Did they meet through theater? Were they Beatrice and Benedict in a high school production?
Oh, I really hope so.
So they actually, so the answer is yes, they did meet through theater. They were attending Northwestern College in Iowa, not the famous Northwestern University.
I was gonna say,
but Northwestern College in Iowa, and they met in the theater department there. Yeah, so they went to college together and got married pretty much right out of college, and they relocated to Arizona pretty much right after they got married, and have been involved in the theater community in Prescott really ever since then. So since before I was born, since before my older brother was even born, like they go way back there.
When Audrey and I came to see the production of the aforementioned production of Much Ado. So your parents were playing Beatrice and Benedict.
Yep.
And it was like, me and Audrey just were losing our minds. We were like, this is actual goals. Like, this is such a dream.
So what was it like performing with your parents? And did one of them direct it as well? Like, what is it? Have you been directed by a parent? Or what are like those dynamics like?
Yeah, so I've been directed by both of my parents in shows with Lark Productions. So my mom, as the artistic director, also directs the majority of the shows that Lark produces. That Much Ado this past summer was actually directed by another frequent collaborator of their company, Nathaniel Montgomery. So that was Nathaniel's show. And my mom and dad were just actors in it, in addition to all of their normal hats. Like my mom still costumed it and all that stuff. But that being said, I have been directed by both of them in shows. So my dad has directed one show with Lark. He directed the Macbeth that we put on. I want to say that it was 2018 that we did Macbeth. Maybe it was 2017. We did that at Arcosanti, which, if you're not familiar with Arcosanti, it's an architectural experiment kind of out in the middle of the desert. This architect, Paolo Soleri, he had the idea of kind of creating like a utopian society that where art and life, the environment kind of coexisted in a single space. There's been some controversy about Paolo Soleri, the man, but his ideas kind of live on at Arcosanti, and they like to bring in artists to create work in the space because that's what it was originally intended for. So we did Macbeth there, and my dad directed. I played Malcolm in that production, and actually my older brother played Macduff. That Malcolm and Macduff scene was very fun for me to play because I was playing opposite my older brother in that scene, and my dad was directing. So it was very it's I want to say it comes with its own unique benefits and challenges working with family, because they're people who know you so well and have so much prior context on who you are as a person, how you operate, and especially because we're a big theater family, we did a lot of theater together growing up. Previous to Lark Productions, my whole family was involved with the Arizona Shakespeare Festival, and we did a bunch of summer rep shows with them when I was growing up. So not only do my family have a lot of context on me as a person, they also have a lot of context on me as an artist and as an actor, and vice versa, right? So on the one hand, it's beneficial because there's a lot of shorthand, and it's not as challenging as it sometimes is to communicate artistically with a director who you've just met for the first time. Or fellow actors who you maybe don't have a lot of experience interacting with outside of like one specific show. So sometimes it's easier because they'll be able to give you a pointer or a piece of direction or something that immediately clicks because they know you so well. That being said, sometimes it can be challenging working with family, because if you have a disagreement about something production related, you have to make sure that when you communicate that, you communicate it in a way where they understand that it's not like deeper than that, like it's strictly production related,
not personal.
exactly which is, I mean, I guess not too different from doing theater with your friends, and the longer you're at a specific company and the more you encounter like frequent collaborators, you really start to build those relationships with them as well. It's just I kind of I was kind of born into that specific group of artistic collaborators.
I was going to say it's similar. Like, I mean, me, Dawn, and Becki, specifically me and Dawn. I mean, how many shows have we done? I mean, this is like, we're coming up on like 5 or 6 years of friendship. So she feels like a sister in a lot of ways. So it is true. You have to like find the balance of work, play, all those things, and like be able to like seamlessly move through the conflicts and the good times too. It's tough.
And I've also been directed by my mom a bunch of times, way more, because she's directed, like I said, the majority of the shows with Lark. So she's probably the director that I've worked with. Not probably, she's definitely the director that I've worked with the most in my career. When I was in high school and my early years in college, I used to point to her as an acting coach as well. Basically, be like, well, I never paid her a cent, but she taught me everything that I know about acting. She's always great to work with. She's got a lot of experience, and she's also like a very like empathetic and actor forward director, which is always something that I appreciate. She likes to give her actors a lot of room to play.
Yay, mamas!
Right, I'm listening and I'm just like, I hope Blake talks about me this way one day.
I was just gonna say, I wonder if Blake becomes an actor. I mean, we literally made the joke on the last episode of the whole accountant joke, but I really hope that he's an actor and not an accountant. But I guess we'll have to see.
He's only 9 months old, so I guess I have no way to tell him. I just have a feeling he won't be.
I have a feeling too.
I mean, if there's anything that I can attest to, though, it's that if you're born into a family of theater artists, whether you want to or not, I feel like you end up at least partially existing in that world, right? Because when I went to college, I like actively was like, okay, I'm done doing the theater thing. I did it for years and years because like it was what my parents were doing, and now I'm like gonna do my own thing. And when I went to NAU for undergrad, my first major was journalism. Did it for a semester and found out that I was really bad at it because I don't like to research. Got my first D of my entire life in my intro to journalism.
Oh no!
And I was like, well, okay, maybe this isn't for me. So I was like, and I gave it a summer's worth of thought, and I was like, I guess it's time to go back to the theater thing because I know I'm good at that. So who knows? Maybe Blake will end up like me and feel like he doesn't necessarily have a choice. In the matter.
Guys to separate, but fate takes over.
Yes. Thanks for that amazing background. I loved seeing that Lark production. I'm hoping to see many, many more. But pivoting on over to Flag Shanks, tell everybody, what you've done with us, and then we'll sort of get into the topic of discussion, which is going to be about Comedy of Errors today.
Yeah, so my first main stage role with Flag Shakes was last December. I was in Christmas Carol, and I played Jacob Marley and the Ghost of Christmas Present. So I did that, and that was a super fun time. Great main stage introduction to Flag Shakes, and also like very familiar for me. Like I did that main stage show, and I was like, oh, like this place kind of already feels like home to me, because I've worked with enough like small companies that the vibe was something that I kind of settled into immediately. I was like, these are my people, this is my thing, I get it. From there, I did summer rep with y'all, and played Iago in your Othello this past summer, and also played the butler Lane in the absolutely wild, crazy ass production of Importance of Being Earnest that James Cougar Canfield directed, and both of those were super fun experiences. Yeah, and aside from that, I've done window shakes, little scenes from Shakespeare. Got to work with Trey Peace doing the Brutus Cassius scene, which just to go on a sidebar for a second, that Brutus Cassius scene. Yeah, that Brutus Cassius scene. So it's I think Act 4, Scene 3, I want to say, of Julius Caesar. Brutus and Cassius in the tent having their argument. I've done that scene twice with Flag Shakes and several times elsewhere. And that is one of my favorite scenes in Shakespeare, maybe my favorite scene in Shakespeare, because I think that it is so rare in modern media that you get a heart-to-heart that is full of as much passion and emotion and feeling between two men. So that's something that I really gravitate toward. You know, I'm like a cisgender heterosexual white man. So there's a lot of representation for me in media. That's never something that I've had to fight for,
search for.
exactly. But that being said, there is a lack of representation for men in more like raw and emotional moments, and allowing themselves to really explore their feelings. And that's one of the things that I think Shakespeare over his entire canon does really well. He's a great explorer and adventurer in the world of human emotion. And I think that scene really speaks to me specifically, and my experience as a man. So I just wanted to gush about that. But I had a chance to do that scene a couple times, once during Window Shakes, and then again recently at the Coconino County Fair. So that pretty much sums up my Flag Shakes experience.
Okay. So you are playing one of the Dromios, although I forget which Dromio. Which Dromio are you?
Syracuse.
Okay, Dromio of Syracuse. Tell us about the process so far. Obviously, it's only been like barely a week. This show runs October 7th through the 16th at the Coconino Center for the Arts. And we will continue to plug that. But how's it going?
It's going well so far. It has been a great first week of rehearsal. Our director sadly hasn't been with us in person because she had a family emergency, but we've had the amazing luxury of working with our text coach, Christine. And she has been doing amazing work with the cast. It's been really, really fun to dive in deep on the text really early into the rehearsal process. I am a huge table work and text work nut. I love diving in deep on the text and getting as much meaning out of it as I can. And working with Christine has been right up my alley. It's so awesome. And the work that... Yeah, and it's so cool to be working with someone who works at Shakespeare's Globe with text work. It's like it's a dream come true. So that's been great. We're also doing a Ren run as part of our rehearsal process, which this is my first Ren run. Yeah, I was going to say, for listeners who might not know what a Ren run is, anyone who doesn't know what it is. A Ren run is basically when the cast, the actors, get together and essentially, when really early in the rehearsal process, still with like scripts in hand, right? They get together and block the play themselves, stage the play themselves, and come up with their own kind of interpretation of the action in the scenes. So they get up on their feet and do it without the eye of a director. It's been a really interesting process, and it's been really cool and fun to work in that collaborative way prior to getting a director's input, because it's allowing us to kind of workshop some stuff. It's a comedy, so obviously we're workshopping a bunch of like bits and physical comedy, physical business, and it's going to be cool and to see what Catherine's reaction to that is, and which bit she wants to keep, what she wants to workshop or scrap. And it's my first time ever doing it this way, and it's been really kind of enlightening and fun so far. And as someone who has some interest in potentially directing some shows in the future, dipping my toe into that arena as well, might be a tool that I leverage. So I'm keeping it in the back of my mind.
Yeah, I've never done a Ren Run, but it is a fun idea because it's not just like a fully collaborative process. Because for me, at least, that gets a little bit scary. And I have friends who run like fully collaborative companies that sometimes they're like, oh, I had such a bad day today. Everyone was yelling on top of each other and no one could decide on anything. So it's like, it's a fine line. Like having a director, I think, is very, very important, but the collaborative aspects are so fun. So I think with the Ren Run, it's great because you get like these fun instincts and the collaborative nature, but then you still have a person that's in charge of the ship to like steer the ship if it's going in a wrong direction. But you also have like those fun moments that might be discovered during the Ren Run. So I think it's a really cool idea.
At the ASC, they do a whole Ren season. And you get 4 weeks to rehearse the play, or 4 days, sorry, to rehearse the play. Wow. You come off book, and whatever happens on stage, it happens. Like, your Ren Run is actually completely unrehearsed. It's just everyone entering and exiting and saying their lines. And it's amazing what you can discover about the text or about what's going on. Like, obviously played a lot of bit parts in those because I was still in grad school, and I can remember running on stage at one point, and I have, all you get is your cue script. So you have the 3 words before your line, and then the next 3 words before your next line, and then your line. And it's like, you don't know who you're talking to because you don't have the title. So I can remember coming in as a servant into one scene in King Lear and being like, "My lord!"
Who's my lord?
Looking around the stage like, which one of you
is my lord? Yeah.
You is my lord. Yeah. I know I'm not my lord.
Yeah. But it also keeps you really engaged in what's going on because you have no idea who's about to say the 3 words that come before your line. So you're like, you're listening to everything. Like, at some point, someone's going to say those 3 words, and then I have to respond. And it's amazing the energy that can create. And Hannah's right. You have to have a really great group of actors who collaborate well together. And you can't have any divas, and you can't have anyone who's precious about their own character or married to their own vision. Everyone has to be there for the storytelling experience. But it can be really amazing. And I think what Catherine's doing with you guys is, like Hannah said, a version of that where it really helps you guys grow and discover, but maybe isn't quite as terrifying as an actual Ren Run, but gives you some of the like pieces of that energy and excitement and like getting to feel like you're really part of it. I mean, I will point out Shakespeare never had a director, so it's like
it's possible
how they did it back then, but also it was a very different. I mean, it was a very different business, and it was more of a business, and I think that's an interesting point too when you go into some of these like original practices, is to think like it doesn't all translate obviously to the way that we do nonprofit arts now. But there can be a lot of really cool and useful tools. Justus, I'm curious, like from the text work, is there anything that stood out where you were like, whoa, I never thought of that line that way, or that really revealed a lot about my character and I thought it was just like a silly small line? Or was there anything that you were surprised by during text work?
The comedies overall are not my main area of Shakespeare obsession. I'm kind of a tragedy hound. Which and I was gonna say, like, Becki, Hannah, that probably doesn't come as any surprise. You guys know me.
Absolutely not. When you guys see the photo of Justus, I'm gonna request a silly photo for the Instagram, and it'll probably be like you in one of your black t-shirts, all of your tattoos, like you love all of your scary podcasts.
I'm just for context, for anybody listening, The reason that Shakespeare tragedy seems so directly up my alley is my other interests are like horror movies, true crime podcasts, and heavy metal music.
And lifting heavy things.
yeah, and powerlifting. So it all kind of goes into one big macabre package.
Yes.
Despite the fact that I think I'm a pretty positive person.
You really are. It is so funny.
It's just what I like. I just like the vibes. But anyway, so didn't have a ton of prior experience with Comedy of Errors. But that being said, the stuff in the text that I really latched onto, which is there is so much in Comedy of Errors about superstition and kind of religious panic. And I was getting shades of like satanic panic from the 80s, but also like more presciently, kind of like QAnon stuff, right? Where I was like, people like are really jumping on this idea that like the devil is out to get them and he's behind every single bad thing that is happening in this play. Dromio of Syracuse is part of that, right? There's the scene with the courtesan where Antipholus of Syracuse and Dromio of Syracuse encounter, a sex worker, and immediately react as if she's a demon trying to ruin their lives. In that scene, I was kind of picking up on like, okay, so like basically before she even says anything, these two guys are like, this woman is the devil, and I was looking at the rest of the play as well, and there's just so many people reacting that way, largely to women in the play. So that was one thing that I picked up on, was kind of the theme of kind of paranoia and superstitious panic. Then another thing that I kind of latched onto was it was very interesting to me how one Antipholus, the Antipholus of Ephesus, kind of treats his Dromio markedly worse than the other Antipholus of Syracuse. And we were talking about why that might be. Myself and Evan, the actor who plays Antipholus of Syracuse, were discussing that. We decided that one of the reasons is because the Syracusians are the pair who is aware that they have long lost twins. The other set of twins don't know, right? But these guys do. And so they grew up knowing that they lost a brother, right? And as a result, because they had that knowledge and kind of had that missing piece inside of them, that brought them kind of closer together emotionally than the other Antipholus and Dromio, who have more of a conventional servant-master relationship that we see in a lot of Shakespeare's plays. So Evan and I were talking about it, and we were like, we think that these guys maybe have the surface level relationship that they let society see, which is servant and master, because that's what's correct and proper. But when it's just the two of them, they're maybe a little bit more like brothers, right? And even though they're the same age, canonically, like in the text, we sort of decided that due to his station, Antipholus kind of assumes the role of older brother, while Dromio of Syracuse maybe is kind of the younger brother who is a little bit more mischievous and ill-behaved.
How cute. I love that. I would love to talk more about like comedy versus drama. You kind of touched on it, but like even when we were taking promo photos, I was like, all right, Justus, let's be silly. And it was like, wait a minute, thinking about it, you've like never played a silly role for us. So how has that been? How has like the comedy been?
Yeah, it's been great. I will say I've done more tragedy, and I also feel more confident in that realm. As an actor, I think I gravitate a little bit more serious. I tend to get cast as villains a lot. I think not to toot my own horn, but I think I play villains pretty well. I think it comes sort of naturally to me, because again, I think that just has to do with my more macabre interests.
Not that you're a villain. You're like the nicest human being on the planet.
I appreciate that. But no, I think I just can get into the villain headspace pretty easily, because it's something that I find human behavior pretty interesting, which is one of the reasons that I like true crime. And I think that I get a lot of enjoyment as an actor out of digging into someone's psyche and being like, what causes this person to behave this way? And I feel like there's a lot more meat there with villains a lot of the time, because with heroes and lovers and stuff like that in Shakespeare, their motivations are usually pretty clear, and usually informed by the text, right? What does Romeo want? Juliet, right? It's pretty obvious. With some villains, and I just played Iago. With Iago especially, his motivations are not clear in the text. He says that he has a lot of reasons for doing the things that he does, but some of those reasons change throughout the play. Sometimes he says one thing and sometimes he says another. And when he's talking to someone versus when he's talking to the audience, he says different things. So he's got a lot of ulterior motives. There's a lot of layers to what he wants and what is behind his actions, and I think that's the case with a lot of villains, which is why I kind of go that direction. So that being said, I've done Shakespeare comedies before. I played Touchstone with Lark in As You Like It, which is a wild role. One of Shakespeare's wackiest clowns, Touchstone.
Yes.
And that was a lot of fun. I also played Dr. Caius in Merry Wives of Windsor, the outrageous French stereotype. That was a lot of fun. The thing that I always try and remind myself when I get cast in a comedy, especially as like a clown in a comedy like Dromio is that level of complexity that I just talked about with the villains doesn't necessarily not exist with comedic characters. You just kind of have to approach it from a different angle, right? So as much as I like to dive into the psyche and be like, what makes this person tick? And you can definitely do that with comedic characters and clowns even. I feel like a bigger question for me, especially with somebody like Dromio, who basically is just serving Antipholus for the entire play, is what does this person want? Like, what is he in this play for? Right? Mm-hmm. And there's an obvious motivation for Dromio of finding his brother, right? But I also think he displays a lot of loyalty toward Antipholus. So it's like he probably likes this guy and enjoys working with him, wants to see him succeed and see him happy as well. So there's it's kind of fun to take a reverse approach, and instead of like, how does the psychology inform the behavior? It's like, okay, here's this outrageous behavior. How can I rationalize this as an actor and make it come from a place that feels real? Yeah. Which I think is the hard part for me with comedy is usually I want to take the opposite approach. I want to start in the head, and then work toward the action. And I think in comedy, sometimes you have to do the reverse.
I'm opposite of you. I very much prefer comedy. And when I played Desdemona, I was like, okay, but it was fun. So, I mean, sometimes it's nice to go against type, go against what you normally do. It can be a nice breath of fresh air.
Work some other acting muscles. Justus, you mentioned like you usually play villains, and something that you were talking about kind of just reminded me that like generally people don't see themselves as the villain. Mm-hmm. Right. So like you also kind of have to like the general you, not you specifically, but like figure out like, okay, well, like this villain that I'm playing doesn't necessarily think that they're the villain. Like they're the villain in this story, but like what are the what are the positive reframes that they have to think that like, no, what I'm doing is justified and right and okay. But obviously, or well, maybe not obviously for some, but yeah, like, but it's not always. People just don't think that they're the villain in their own story. So, and
that's one of the things that I wanted to really avoid playing Iago in the summer rep is being. I kept saying I don't want this guy to be a cartoon, right? Mm-hmm. Because I feel like I feel like a lot of the time when Shakespeare villains are done poorly, they come across as like a Disney villain.
Yeah, like the twisting of the mustache sort of Iago.
Yeah, like the Disney villain singing a big bombastic villain song saying, I'm bad, look at how bad I am, right?
Look at how bad I am. I love being bad. Isn't being bad great? Yeah.
I think the one and only villain that you can play that way in Shakespeare's canon is Aaron the Moor. Ooh. Because he basically says that. Aaron the Moor,
that's true.
I would almost call him the secondary or maybe tertiary villain of Titus Andronicus, because there's also Tamara and Saturninus, who are both also huge scumbags. Saturninus is such an ass. But anyway.
There's no clear villain in that play.
No.
Yeah.
Titus is a terrible person. Lucius is a terrible person. Like, there's no good person.
The only good person I think is you can make an argument for Marcus. I think Marcus Andronicus is maybe the decent human being in that show. Other than
I would like to argue for
Lavinia.
Quintus. I played Quintus, and all Quintus did was fall into a hole. There was nothing that Quintus did wrong. He just fell into a hole. So we can't blame him for anything that transpired in that play. So actually, Quintus is the hero of the story, I'd like to say.
Okay,
there should be a fool-esque novel that tells the story. The fool tells the story of Lear from the fool's perspective. There should be a Titus Andronicus from Quintus's perspective.
Wait, what's the other brother that falls in with Quintus? Is it Marcius?
Yeah, I mean, they're all named Is something.
Yeah. How do we always end up on Titus? I don't know how that
happens. Because it is the pinnacle of Shakespeare's work. It is both the worst and best and funniest and saddest thing he ever wrote. I mean,
it's a wild play.
He nailed it.
When we did that with the Arizona Shakespeare Festival way back in the day, I was like a very, very young actor. I was just ensemble in that show. I was a literal child who brought Titus his severed hand on a platter.
Oh, cute.
But when we did that show back then, somebody in the cast made the observation that show before the 7 stages of grief were like documented and established, that show depicts Titus going through each of them in order, which is that goes back to what I was saying about Shakespeare being such a master of understanding human emotion, right? It's like he intuitively knew this thing that now is like part of psychology, like these 7 stages of grief.
Well, I just want to go back and touch upon the Ren runs again. And I guess, well, Dawn, specifically, I have a question for you at ASC. So there's this style of acting called demi-dove, which sounds pretty similar, where it's like the actor just follows their impulse for performances. And maybe the blocking is like this one night and the blocking is different another night because the actor is feeling something different. But my qualm with that, I guess, and this didn't exist when I think that style of acting, and I don't know what they were doing in Shakespeare, but John, maybe you know, is things like intimacy and fight choreography, where you don't necessarily want those to be on
just
an impulse.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what you did for that.
We discussed all of that ahead of time. I mean, I had one kiss in a show like that, and it didn't happen until the actor who kissed me and I had a discussion about it. I've actually had that line crossed where an actress when I was in Titus and I played Lavinia, the actress playing Tamara one night during the show licked my face.
Ugh.
Like, it was super creepy and really scary, and it was not choreographed, and she was so in the moment that she just kind of did it. Retrospectively, I'm like, oh God, I can't believe that happened. I would pray that doesn't happen on stage anymore. At the time, I was kind of like, oh, okay. But there were fights were definitely choreographed. Those kinds of things were very carefully done. We, on the other end of it, like, there was a lot of improvisation. The scene that I was in, we did a play called The Blind Beggar of Alexandria, which is like a Renaissance Shakespeare adjacent play. Mm-hmm. And in the scene, the guy who played the blind beggar kills the guy who I'm engaged to. And he killed him with this enormous 8-foot spear. And he would stab him, and every night this whole thing would get more and more and more elaborate. And Greg would his death would get longer, it would get louder, it would get more exaggerated. It was just like the whole thing just kept growing and growing. Until one night when John bent me over to kiss me, I just see behind John, Greg Phelps just grab this 8-foot spear that's still in his armpit, sticking out of his chest. And he just goes, and starts climbing back up it. So John had to go re-kill him. And I laughed so hard, and it was a performance. And I laughed so hard. And I got off stage and I asked John Harrell, I just asked him, I said, like, how do you not break character? And he looked at me and he was like, I've never been in character. And I was like, oh my God, this is the biggest revelation I've ever had as an actress. Because I suddenly realized you limit yourself to the reaction you can have on stage if you decide that this is how your character would behave or that is how your character would behave. And so, you know, my character was kind of like a snarky, like prissy, like she was Aspasia, the princess of Egypt, like someone who never existed. And I just thought, oh, she totally would have laughed. She would have thought it was hysterical. She just would have, like, it would have been a different laugh than the one I used. So, like, I had such a revelation in that moment that informed all the rest of the acting I've ever done, which is like, there's no such thing for me as in character. Yeah. It's just me in the circumstance. Like, this is me, but this is the situation I'm in. Right. So I thought that was really powerful and profound. But yeah, you do have to be careful because intimacy and combat choreography obviously aren't things you should screw with. Yeah. Like, they need to be what they are. And if someone wants to make a change, there has to be a discussion. But outside of that, there's a lot of room for improvisation. So.
Yeah. And just like a peek behind the curtain for the run that we're working on for Comedy of Errors as well. There is anyone who's familiar with Comedy of Errors will know that there's lots of violence in that show. And for the purposes of the run right now, because we don't have our director with us and we want to be conscientious of all the actors' safety and comfort, we're just marking those things with non-physical, like non-violent actions, right? Because that's a really good point. It's like as much as you want to be able to be free to improvise and play, it's always super important to respect other actors. Never done a run to performance, and after hearing you describe some of it, I don't know if I would want to, because I'm not a strong improviser. I am very heavily text reliant.
Yeah. I hate improv, Justice, but I would do a run again in a heartbeat if someone asked me. It's just so you know, like, there's already so much like adrenaline and stuff that comes along with acting, but there's nothing like the adrenaline rush of a run.
I will say, after us talking about it, I'm 50-50. I'm like, I really want to do it, but it also sounds terrifying.
Yeah, it sounds really scary, but fun. Yeah. Scary, but fun.
Yeah.
It's scary, but fun.
So I find sometimes when I'm memorizing, I might put like the last line of whatever before my line. But then I'm like, wow, I'm really struggling to memorize this line. And then it's because I realize, because like what I'm responding to is earlier on in the line that I don't have written down. So I'm like, where does this come from? So like only having those 3 words before, that gives me anxiety.
Yeah, major
but it also because when I was doing stuff with Southwest Shakespeare Festival, we did a similar thing where we had we were doing an educational tour in schools.
Oh, you did scrolls, didn't you?
Yeah, called "This Is How We Scroll." And actually, one of the old education directors for Southwest Shakes, Brianna Conrad, is the other Dromio in our comedy. But yeah, so we had scripts that were like that, where it was just like the end of the cue line before and then your line. And I think Becki, it was scary, but I also think it was weirdly really beneficial to the scenes, because it forces you to listen to the other actor. Yeah. You cannot be in your own head. And sometimes doing like a regular production, I'll find myself thinking about, my next line more than what the other person's saying. Yeah. And you physically can't do that when you're not off book and you have a script of that nature that only has like a little bit of the line before yours, because in order for you to know how to react to what they're saying, you really have to be listening. So it was like a really useful exercise for me as an actor, because I was like, oh, this is like making me get more engaged in these scenes than I probably would be otherwise. I can't drift off, or I'm not going to have context for what I'm saying next.
Yeah, another amazing thing I learned through runs was like, because this is the way Shakespeare's cue scripts were written, so we know these are the kinds of cue scripts he was using in the theater. And sometimes you learn like what he wanted an actor to do, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but I know it was in Henry VI Part 1. And I came in, and in my cue script, I had like the 3 words that I responded to, and they were said, I kid you not, 4 times before my line. Like those 3 words kept being said by other people. And so then I would try to speak, and then someone else would keep talking, or someone else would respond to them. And it was like, but in the moment, again, because I played all these little piddly characters, in the moment, I was like, y'all, I have a message. Like, I have shit to say. And all of you in the court of France just keep talking over me. Like, you would shut up for a second. Like, the English are right here. Like, you know what I mean? So I remember learning that in the Ren Run, and then being like, oh, that's how I'm going to play it every night. Every night I'm going to be like,
yeah.
you know, but I couldn't just interject because I was lower status than everybody else. So it was fascinating because I was like, oh, Shakespeare knew that. And when it happened, like it was an acting direction from Shakespeare to me, which is like goosebumpy and cool, you know, which it's like, whoa.
That actually goes back to something we were saying earlier, where it's like in Shakespeare's day, there was no director. The text was the director, right? Like it's like so much of the action, the emotion, the intention in Shakespeare's works is informed directly by the text, even without stage directions, right? Like, I think that's like a perfect example of that. It's like so much of how the play should be staged exists in just what the characters say to each other. So it's like, in a way, Shakespeare was the director, right? Just by penning the plays himself.
Right. Yeah, when he wanted you to get on your knees,
Yeah.
You said, here on my knees, I say.
Yeah. Or the next person after you said, kneel not, right? Yeah. And it's like, it tells you exactly what that moment should look like.
We have just been going. We've been going. We're kind of going long. Basically, guys, come see Justus as Dromio. He's going to be great. It's Wild West themed, so come on. Can't beat that. Yeah, it's gonna be a blast. Is there anything any last minute thoughts from anybody to sort of wrap up Comedy of Errors?
I will say, like, regarding the Wild West thing, there has to be some kind of unconscious link between Wild West settings and Shakespeare comedies, because this is the fourth Wild West themed Shakespeare comedy that I will have appeared in. Maybe that's just because I'm in Arizona doing Shakespeare.
True.
And
I think there's something there. Yeah.
I think it kind of does work with the vibe of Shakespeare's comedies, because so much of his comedies are about, mistaken identity and like status. Right. Status is a big player in his comedies, servants versus masters. So it's hard to fully modernize. Yeah. Dueling is another one. Violence that doesn't actually end up being very violent, right? And it kind of all fits into that like spaghetti Western aesthetic.
I've actually seen a Wild West Comedy of Errors, so it's not far off.
Despite this being a funny, silly comedy, she does want it to feel like it has real stakes, and that people are really at risk, people are really in danger, and people really are yearning and fighting for what they want. And I think that part of the inherent kind of danger and adventure that is present in the setting of like the Wild West will kind of feed into that as well.
I can't wait to see it. Again, it is running October 7th through 16th at the Coconino Center for the Arts. We are changing things a little bit. Usually we do Thursdays through Sundays, but we are doing Fridays through Sundays for this show. Flagshakes.org. Yeah. How can people find you, Justus? Do you have Instagram, or are you working on other projects that people can go watch and look at and see?
So no other projects currently for me, but if people want to see what's up with me, at Justus Burkitt on Instagram. If I'm in a show, I'll post about it there. And then also, I would encourage you to follow my frequent artistic collaborators, Flagshakes being one of them. But also, if you want to look up Lark Productions, they don't really have much of a social media presence, but they do have a website. But yeah, my main plug would just be to follow the companies that I work with. And then also just to support the work of these people that I work with and care about and enjoy being around.
Just to brag on Justus a little bit, he's not only an amazing actor, but he's just one of those people we can always call on at Flagshakes when we need something, when we need help. He's ready and he's willing to work, and he wants to get the job done, and he does it with a smile, and then he'll usually also buy you a beer at the end of the night, and you're like, wait a minute. You're like, you just did something for me and you're buying me a beer. Like, what's happening here?
Hannah, you're melting my typecast as a villain heart.
Your
right
frozen heart.
Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah, I know. I'm still shaking the Iago out of my system.
Yeah.
I gotta remember that people like me and say nice things about me.
People like you.
Thanks for listening to this month's episode of Untamed Shrews. I'm Dawn.
And I'm Hannah.
And I'm Becki. Join us next time for another Shrews only episode. Have a topic you want us to discuss? Let us know.
Follow Untamed Shrews on our Instagram at Untamed Shrews Podcast and on Facebook at facebook.com/Flagstaff Shakespeare Festival. All episodes of Untamed Shrews can be found on sunsounds.org, the Flagstaff Shakespeare Festival YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and now Amazon. Please subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review, or put us on your Instagram stories. Help support the Shrew Crew. If you would like to make a donation to keep the Shrews shrewing, please visit flagshakes.org/donate or DM us about becoming a podcast sponsor.
This episode of Untamed Shrews starring Dawn Tucker, Becki Zaritsky, Hannah Fons, and Justus Burkitt. Show art by Calliope Luedeker. Podcast theme song by Cadence Lamb. Podcast produced and edited by Hannah Fons. Presented by Flagstaff Shakespeare Festival. And recorded with Sun Sounds of Arizona. Special thanks to our audio engineer, Gina Byars. And thank you so much, Justus!
Woo!
Ow, ow!
Yeah, thank you all. It's been super fun.
Bye!
Bye.
Bye.